Dr. Lynne Kitei, thank you very much. Thank you for being here and discussing about the Phoenix Lights.
My supreme pleasure, particularly for those in Italy that are interested in this topic. I did visit Italy a few years ago and spoke in Riccione, which was very exciting. I look forward to my next trip to Italy, so maybe I'll get to meet some of the participants in your forum.
That would be very nice. Now you know me, so I can give you some suggestion for places to see and to visit also.
Absolutely.
Dr. Lynne, it's very well known that you are an expert about the Phoenix Lights and you are also a person of science. So if you would like, please, to say a little bit about you and feel free to express anything about the Phoenix Lights that you think or you know.
It's very ironic, actually, that my life's work has been donating my time and expertise and monies to community education of vital health issues. I actually started while I was still in my training, medical training. I'm an MD, and one must be open to whatever comes through the door. So I'm a healthy skeptic. But in 1976, I started doing health reporting for NBC News in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. A syndication grew from that of 120 60-second pieces on everything from how to prevent a heart attack to what to do for a burn. And it was actually showing, the syndication was showing here in Phoenix, Arizona, when we moved here at CBS TV, in 1980, and then I also did health reporting for NBC here in Phoenix and also USA Cable when it was just getting started, and as the health consultant there. So by 1985, not only did I have expertise in doing everything from researching, writing, going out in the field and directing a shoot, to editing and then being on the set to talk to whoever the host is afterwards and answer questions. But I was also seeing kids in the practice, adolescent medicine is my specialty, and medical communications, that were drowning in substance abuse and wanted to do something really impactful to wake them up to the realities, because many of these kids were from wonderful families, but the peer pressure was getting them sucked into the whole drug world and substance abuse world. And I thought, if I just do a TV program, most of the kids aren't going to get to see it. But if I go into the classroom and do curriculum, that hopefully they'll wake up to the reality of substance abuse. Long story short, I ended up taking my other hat before I went to medical school. I was in professional musical theater. I toured, and some of you might recognize the name Gordon McRae, who was in the movie of Oklahoma, Betty Grable, who was very famous. She was the lead in Guys and Dolls musical. I understudied Barbara Eden, who actually was a star of Sound of Music. She was Jeannie. I don't know if people there watched I Dream of Jeannie, but she was wonderful. I understudied her and a number of others, and Broadway and so forth, and kind of combined that expertise with my medical expertise to do the medical reporting in the first place. And anyway, I combined kids who had been there that had gotten in trouble with substances, told their stories, had experts in the field, and then I brought in my other hat and had celebrities that imparted poignant messages. Sylvester Stallone, Jean-Claude Van Damme, the original cast from Beverly Hills 90210, Paula Abdul, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, a whole host of celebrities, to try to touch the kids, one kid at a time, and wake them up to the reality of substance abuse. Anyway, it was so successful. The first one was so successful that I was asked to do other topics, AIDS, teen pregnancy, and so forth. They've won all kinds of awards. And brings us to 1995, okay? With no interest or knowledge in the topic of UFOs or UAP, unexplained aerial phenomena at all. We live mountainside in Paradise Valley. If anybody's by their computer, if they'd like to go to the Phoenix Lights Network website, www.thephoenixlights.net, and go to the photo page. One of the things that prompted me to come forward 7 years after thousands of people saw what I had been seeing for 2 years and documenting on film, 35 millimeter. I'm the only person with 35 millimeter photographs of these anomalous aerial phenomena that have been analyzed by military and university optical experts as true unknowns. Nobody can explain to me what they are after years of trying to find a logical explanation. At any rate, 1995, if you go on that website, on the photo page, the first picture shows a topography from our view. We're pretty high on the mountain that surrounds the Valley of the Sun, they call it. And in the distance, we see two mountain ranges, South Mountain and the Estrella Mountain Range. Right in front of South Mountain is the airport, which will become significant. In that first picture, I show a car on the road, and you can see that the lights of the car reflect onto the road. It's in the bottom left of that picture. Very unlike the true unknowns, which are self-contained. We're going to get to that. And to the right of that car are skylights on the roof of a house that are significant because in the dark, they show, if you look straight up, where South Mountain and the Estrellas intersect. Now, going back to 1995, and I will get to the significance of that, without any interest or knowledge, and there's so many coincidences, I hope that people will pick up the book, The Phoenix Light, The Skeptic's Discovery That We Are Not Alone, which I finally condensed. Ah, there you go.
I did the homework.
50-page journal, which I'll also get to. But anyway, it was the eve of my birthday. What a birthday gift. Okay. I'm in a room separate from our bedroom. And in our bedroom, one wall of our bedroom is a window. So whatever pops up out there, because we're pretty high on the mountain, we get to see, whether it's a dust storm or a fire or the lights coming into Sky Harbor International Airport, which is just in front of South Mountain. So we know, we were very familiar with planes and car lights and street lights and helicopter lights and so forth. My husband, who's also a physician and a healthy skeptic, was standing at the window at the time, talking to my mother-in-law, who had called to wish me a happy birthday from Philadelphia. And he was on several hospital and state medical boards, and nothing ever ruffled his feathers. And suddenly he sounded alarmed, and he says, "Lynn, get over here quick. What the hell is that?" So I grabbed my towel, wringing wet, run to the window, dripping, and a little below us, and keep in mind, this is significant, they were kind of nestled in a mountain range, number one. Number two, it's gated, very private, okay? Number three, we're really high, and a little below us, okay, were three oval orbs. I always go back to this sighting because it was right outside our bedroom window, literally and figuratively. A little below us over very treacherous desert landscape. There's no way anyone was there. It's gated, okay? It was so unusual. And of course, I wanted to run downstairs to grab my video camera because that's what I do. And, but I didn't want to miss anything. And you'll hear from many people who have had paranormal experiences, they don't move. Not only are you in awe at what you're seeing, but you don't know how long it's going to last. So I tried to take everything in mentally, the size, the shape, the color. They were about 3 to 6 feet each, depending on how close they were. They were oval shaped, which is interesting. I always, liken them to a lozenge or an egg on its side, which is interesting now that the Navy Nimitz pilots are coming forward with a Tic Tac video and describing what they were seeing that were very unusual as oval shaped or lozenge shaped. Don't know if it's the same phenomena, but nonetheless, they were oval. Called them an orb because the light did not extend outside the edge. It was self-contained. And the color within each orb was a uniform amber color throughout, didn't glare at all. Every other light out there glared. These did not. They were very mesmerizing, very soothing. And the thought popped in my head, if I don't get a picture of this, no one's going to believe it. So I go running to the closet. I collect sunsets, beautiful sunsets. And if you go to that photo page and scroll down to the bottom, you'll see two huge rod-shaped objects that I caught in sunsets that I did not see when I was taking the pictures. This is 35 millimeter. They're in the negative, in the same location, a month apart. Okay. But at any rate, I go running to the closet to grab my 35 millimeter. My husband calls me back. He says, get over here quick. One of them is disappearing. And again, I always go back to this sighting because I saw this up close and personal. The top orb, without budging from the other two that were underneath it, started to shrink very, very slowly, mechanically, as if there was an intelligent presence behind it. Almost like a dimmer switch. When somebody's doing a dimmer switch, it's very difficult to describe in logical terms. But nonetheless, it was happening right in front of our eyes until it was pea-sized and then disappeared. But it still felt like it was there. Where did he go? I stepped out on the balcony, took a quick picture of the two lower orbs, and immediately noticed an eerie silence, as if time had stopped. It was just bizarre. And as intently as I was watching these two lower orbs, and I did not share this with the soul until 2 years later after the mass sighting, it felt like something was watching me. And going through my mind at that moment, I was thinking, who are you? What are you? Do you know that I'm here? I'd love to meet you. And the next thing I remember, the left bottom orb started to shrink very slowly, just like the top one did. And something told me to take a picture, and I shot a picture of that. That was the only one that turned out at the time. But for me, it was significant because not only did I capture, one half disappeared and one's still there on a cheap Canon Instamatic camera. I couldn't believe it actually turned out. More pictures turned out later, but that was the one that was really significant for me because it really proved that something did happen. We did see something unusual right outside our bedroom window, but I didn't even know who to show it to. I knew no one who was into the topic, and I just wondered for 2 years what this advanced technology was. Suddenly, 2 months before the mass sighting, without anything even remotely similar showing up in the skies. And I have to admit that when I went up in the bedroom, I would, look outside in the evening to see if I saw anything similar. Nothing. Suddenly, January 22nd, 97, I'm lying in bed and I see 3 orbs, giant orbs, but at a distance, far west. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, they're in a formation, equidistant from each other in a line formation. They're amber. They're hovering for minutes. They're huge. And I watch each one shrink slowly from right to left until they were out. Now, interestingly, my husband was inside. I was outside on the balcony in 95. What I told you is what I remember. I don't remember the last light going out. I don't remember coming in that night. I don't remember looking at a clock. But after that, my husband would not talk about it. He got a little agitated every time I brought it up, which is interesting. Everybody comes from a different background, from a different upbringing, from a different belief system, worldview. Some people can't deal with this topic. Some people don't want to, and that's okay. Everyone in their own time. But it's important that we get this topic out in the open. We address it, we accept it, and we study it so we can find out not only who's driving these things, but move forward in our own evolution. At any rate, at this point, I mentioned this to my husband that I saw the 3 lights in a row, and he says, oh, do I still have to go to work tomorrow? I mean, that was his remark. At any rate, the next evening, the 23rd of January, 97, my husband was at a medical board meeting, I come upstairs to the bedroom and I notice out of the sliding glass door that's perpendicular to the big window, the same three orbs in a row, equidistant from each other, are now in front of South Mountain. And I knew they were in front of South Mountain because there are red blinking lights on the top of the mountain to alert airplanes coming into Sky Harbor International Airport, which is just in front of South Mountain. And I thought to myself, okay, enough. I'm getting my video camera. I grab my video camera, which was charged. I go outside. I'm just ready to shoot the three, and I got about 18 seconds worth. The battery goes dead. Okay. I go inside. It's about 8 o'clock. I hook up the battery, go outside. They're gone. My husband comes up the drive about a half hour later at 8:30, and I go outside. I said, remember I told you about those three giant orbs, amber orbs in an equidistant line last night far west? Well, about a half an hour ago, they were right in front of South Mountain. As I'm pointing like this, they reappear in the same spot. It was like, whoa, I got to get a picture of this. Again, I don't believe in coincidence. In video, it doesn't do the orbs justice. Anybody that sees the video, and there's only a handful of videos, the lights are much smaller, they're white, they flicker. Nonetheless, if you really study them, the formations themselves are very compelling. But on 35 millimeter, they're in the negative. They cannot be denied or explained to this day. At any rate, I grab my, run upstairs, I grab my 35 millimeter, I get out on the balcony. Just as I'm ready to shoot the three, suddenly 6 lights pop on. Massive span, over a mile wide. Totally equidistant from each other, 6 lights in a row. I started to shake. And if you look at the first picture of that series, you'll see that it's wavy because I was shaking. Not having an explanation for 95. When this popped up, and it was massive, over a mile wide, at a distance, it was like, whoa, is this a mothership or a fleet? But I, thank goodness, kept my head about me and continued to take 35 millimeter photographs. The second picture, of which to me is a smoking gun, because if you look at that picture, it's like a V with one large light in the center with 2 on each side, and it looks like there's 2 underneath. Well, 2 months later, thousands of people would describe what they were seeing as 5 lights in a V formation with 2 trailing lights. This is 2 months before the mass sighting, mind you. Then it seemed that this object, whatever it was, this UAP, unexplained aerial phenomena, that I was capturing head on, was turning into a V shape. And you can see that in the pictures. Did not sleep well that night. Actually, while the 3 were disappearing underneath, I ran inside, called the Arizona Republic newspaper, which is a big newspaper here. And I said, you got to get somebody out there quick. There's strange lights in front of South Mountain, and tell me what they are. By the time I finished my sentence, they were gone. Next morning, I woke up. I figured, okay, being the healthy skeptic that I am, there must be a logical explanation, right? So I figured, I called the Arizona Republic, asked the operator, did anyone call last night to report strange lights in front of South Mountain? She gets off, she gets right back on. She said, no, nobody called. Well, I know I called. So I said, well, my husband and I did see something unusual, probably a logical explanation, just want to find out what it is. She says, well, sometimes Luke Air Force Base, which is close to Phoenix, sends off experimental maneuvers and they don't tell the public about it. I figured, that sounds reasonable, but let me see. So I called them up and I tried to be very professional. My husband and I are both physicians. We live mountainside in Paradise Valley, and we saw strange lights in front of South Mountain. Do you have any idea what they might have been? And from the get-go, she had an attitude. And she said, well, they didn't come into Luke Air Force Base. They didn't come out from here, so we had nothing to do with them. I said, well, be that as it may, we did see something unusual. She said, well, you said it was near the airport. Maybe they saw something there. Aha, now it was a mission. I had to find out what these things were. So I called the FAA at the airport, Sky Harbor International Airport, told her the same thing. She was very nice. She says, well, maybe some air traffic controllers saw something last night. Let me inquire. I said, great. She leaves me hanging forever. Finally, she comes back on and she says, well, there was a group of air traffic controllers here last night that did see something, some lights that were very unusual appear over Class B restricted airspace. There's a 30-mile radius around the center of the airport. Anything that comes into that airspace must call the tower, and no one did. So I asked the operator, I said, please, if there's anybody there this morning, can I please speak with them and see if we saw the same thing? She gets off, again, leaving me hanging for like 5 minutes. It seemed like an eternity. Finally, this fella gets on, this air traffic controller gets on the phone. Met him subsequently, a real low-key guy. He was more excited than I was. He said, did you see this excitement where you sit from each other having information last night at 8:30? I said, yes, that's why I'm calling. He said, you saw them at a distance? I said, yes. He was so excited that I saw them. He said, actually, there were 3 at 8 o'clock. I said, I saw them too. He said they appeared over Class B restricted airspace. Again, nobody called in, especially 1,000 feet that these were, so they got alarmed. He said they looked on radar, did not show up on radar. So they took their high-powered binoculars to look. And in his own words, he described 6 points of light, totally equidistant from each other, massive span, over a mile wide, that seemed to be attached to something. But they couldn't quite see what these lights were attached to, which we would also hear again 2 months later during the mass sighting, or had a force field holding them in rock-solid formation. And he happened to be a meteorologist. And he said the entire thing turned as a unit against the wind, significant, elevated slowly, and moved in synchrony behind South Mountain. So I said, so what was it? And there was silence. And then he said, beats me. I said, you're an air traffic controller. You're supposed to know what it's in your airspace. He said, the whole group the night before ruled out every conventional aircraft, balloons, Chinese lanterns, even skydivers with lights and flares. They had no idea what these lights were. They were true unknowns to them. We kept in contact. I continued photographing these phenomena. I guess the scientists in me felt compelled to document them on film. Up until and including March 13th, 1997, which for me was just another night. Unbeknownst to me, there were thousands of people outside on a very clear March 13th evening, looking skyward for a glimpse of the Hale-Bopp comet, which was very clear in the northwest sky, when they also caught a glimpse of Mile, and we just learned a couple years ago from Peter Davenport, the director of the National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle, Washington, that one of these objects from the hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of reports he's received the last 25 years was 8 miles wide. Whoa, I didn't believe it when he first told me. I thought he was joking. No, one of these objects, whether it was these orbs in rock solid formation or actual craft. Now, anybody out there that has looked on the internet or heard things in the media, I have to say that there is much mis and disinformation out there. Another reason that prompted me to come forward after 7 years of anonymity, trying to find a logical explanation for what I witnessed and photographed myself, which I have yet to find 25 years later. But it wasn't just 1 or 2 events, as you will hear. Yes, between 8 and 10 is when most people were outside looking up at the sky at the Hale-Bopp comet, when most of the calls came in to the news and so forth. But the actual mass sighting, which has become the most witnessed, most documented, and most important mass anomalous sighting in modern history, actually began at 3 p.m. that afternoon. Most people have no idea that this was happening for months before as well. But on March 13th, it began at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. 5 o'clock sightings in New Mexico by Native Americans, 7 o'clock hour and beyond in California, 10, 11 o'clock hour, 2 commercial airline pilots reported to radar that they were seeing one of these massive craft cover Las Vegas. And that's a whole story in itself. And then it continued, the sightings continued by very credible people reporting throughout the night till 5:30 the next morning, when a Boeing crew, and I was told by the head of the group, a Boeing crew was coming into Sky Harbor International Airport and saw one of these massive over mile wide craft hovering over their tarmac at Sky Harbor International Airport. So, number one, it was over a dozen hours, the mass sighting. It was seen over 4 states, not just Arizona, okay? But there is so much to this story. Not only that fact, but it also, if you go to the GAP page, Geospatial Animation Project, on the Phoenix Lights Network website, you will see a 12-year study, meticulous study of hundreds of reports. 2 or more people had to report the same exact craft to be in the study. And you will see there illustrations and animations of 10 different craft. Now, whether it was one craft that could morph into looking different, the perspective from where the person was standing, or a parade, which is what the investigators finally concluded after 12 years of meticulous study of the data, is that the mass sighting was actually a parade of multiple phenomena happening at the same time in multiple locations, including the orbs and craft. And we're talking gunmetal bottoms. And some people saw beings at windows. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. And when you look at the pictures, the illustrations on the GAP page, they look very different. So, you know, the bottom line is that there was a lot happening on March 13th. Now, technology-wise, that's a whole other issue that we haven't seen for over 25 years, is we're talking these massive objects, whether they were these orbs that seem to be attached to something, and some people actually saw these orbs detach from the main object, go out into the environment, and then redock with it. Is that what happened in 95? Because if you go back to those pictures, there's a whole story about 95 if we have time to get into it, because they were analyzed very, very intensely by Dr. Bruce McAfee, a Navy optical physicist, and he came to an amazing conclusion after we found more pictures, and the pictures themselves show a story. But if we go back there and you look at those pictures, the same exact line of equidistant orbs was in those pictures as well, disappearing in 95 when the close orbs were disappearing. So they were there in 95. Also, 2 months before the mass sighting, as I mentioned, and during the mass sighting, people also saw these craft glide right over their heads, rooftop level. Some said that they could have thrown a rock at it. It was that close. And no sound, totally silent. And even some took off at blink speed without even dispersing the air. Incredible technology, to be sure. And if you look at one of the pictures, one of the illustrations on the GAP page, GAP, on the Phoenix Lights Network website, one of these craft actually split in two and shot straight up. I mean, we haven't seen anything. You tell me. We haven't seen anything remotely like this technology. Plus, if we had this technology, don't you think, with as precarious as the world is, especially at this time in our history, that we wouldn't have shown our prowess and our advanced technology to the rest of the world? So up till today, we haven't seen anything that's remotely like this technology. At any rate, what's also interesting, and I'm going to just go back for a second, is a couple weeks before the mass sighting. There's another little coincidence, if I can share.
Sure.
It was getting ridiculous. I mean, I really did feel compelled to document these things, but I had no idea what I was documenting. So I figured, okay. And my husband was getting a little annoyed with me running out every time. So I thought, okay, let me show the video to some of my friends and see if anybody knows anyone. I knew no one who was involved with this topic. This is how close I was. A friend of a friend had a neighbor who had a friend who knew the past president of MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, which I had never heard of before. I call him up and I tell him that, you know, I've been seeing these lights. Now, he hadn't heard about it, but there were other people. In fact, yesterday, I just got a message on Facebook from someone who said that they saw it 3 days before the mass sighting. And there were other people. In fact, another fella actually called MUFON up to his balcony the night of the mass sighting from MUFON. And they caught an arrowhead of 5 lights. And all you have to do is just look at the video. I always say the data speaks for itself. Those lights are attached to something or have a force field in between them, holding them in rock solid formation. And his video and my video were taken before 10 o'clock. 2 boomerang videos were taken after 10 o'clock, and we'll get to them because there's a story to tell about the boomerang videos that's very profound and took us on a new road. But at any rate, and I said to this guy, I have a picture from 95, which was the only one that turned out at the time, that I know is authentic, but I'd like someone of credence to take a look at it and tell me what these close orbs are. He hooks me up with a field investigator from MUFON for the following Wednesday, who calls me on Tuesday to say the then state director wanted to be at the meeting, but his mother had passed on Saturday. Could we please postpone? And I thought, whoa, I am so busy for another 2-3 weeks, but I have a little window of opportunity Friday morning at 10 o'clock. He said, fine. I knock on his door. The first thing he says to me when he opens the door is, did you see the mass sighting last night? And I said, whoa. I said, I saw something similar to what I told you I saw 2 months ago. In fact, I called the air traffic controllers this morning because it seemed like the same exact phenomenon, the same exact location. I confirmed that it was 1,000 feet altitude over Class B restricted airspace. And a couple pilots called in. A pilot on departure, a commercial pilot, who said, what the hell are these lights over me? Which is significant. I mean, here's a pilot right on the tarmac, seeing them over him. And a private pilot called in, didn't give me names, but called in to report the B of 6 lights. And I thought that was significant enough, even though I didn't know who they were, to actually include that in my first edition of the book in 2004. The private pilot finally came forward in 2017, which we will get to, who is a significantly famous celebrity, I have to say, which was amazing because he was reporting it while I was filming it. But nonetheless, I said to this guy, this MUFON investigator, I have video from last night. I said, by the time I got out there, the 6 lights had, I guess, turned or something, and I got the 3 endpoints of a massive mile-wide V or triangle. He said, great, because NBC was coming to interview him in a half an hour. I said, whoa. I said, first of all, I don't know what we're dealing with. Is it a hoax? Is it military or whatever? It's not about me. It's never been about me. It's about the data. I said, take a copy of the video. I don't know what it is, but let people see what we saw. Share it with whoever. I'm out of here. And I left. That afternoon, this was the day after the mass sighting, I'm sitting in front of my TV with the VCR one, just waiting to see if they were even going to cover it. And you know how they do breaking news now? Well, every news station, he had shared it with everyone. And they were all showing my video, which was exciting, I have to say, after seeing these things for 2 years, not knowing what they are, but nonetheless, here was video that people could see. By the 9 o'clock news, a couple other videos came forward. The boomerang as well as the arrowhead of 5 lights. And I'm learning for the first time that thousands of people were seeing what I had been seeing for 2 years. Didn't know what to do because I really didn't want to get involved. I had no idea what we're dealing with and just wanted to wait and see. The following Tuesday, I turn on the news. There's my video again. But there's also a fella who they're interviewing who is an expert on UFO studies that also has a computer lab, huge computer lab in Tempe, which is close to Arizona State University. And on the side, he analyzes pictures from all over the world. And he's showing these orbs in triangle formation from UK, from Russia, from Belgium, from Italy. I mean, it was like, whoa, what is going on here? I had no idea that this was happening worldwide. That really got me. From that day forward, pushed my accomplished medical career aside, again, to find a logical explanation, and kept an intricate journal every day because I knew nothing about this topic. I found out, I mean, such amazing things that there's a history of these phenomena occurring since human documentation began. That's a whole nother hour that we could talk about, of Sumerian writings, India writings, even the Bible, Ezekiel's wheel that could be interpreted as a UFO, as well as fast forward to actually 100 years before our mass sighting. There was another mass sighting in Kansas, in California, in Washington, and even Canada, of what they would describe, and this was in 1897, 100 years before I was in April, okay, right around the same time, of what they described as a massive airship that had removable lights. Sound familiar? Okay. This was 6 years before the Wright brothers took flight, okay? And then you fast forward again, and in World War II, what they called Foo Fighters, meaning fire in French. And in our documentary DVD, in the bonus features, we actually interview a 93-year young pilot, French pilot, who reported these orbs, each side thought the other side had this advanced technology. These orbs were around the aircraft, and it wasn't until after the war that Germany, Japan, and the United States, nobody could find out where these orbs came from, who had this advanced spy technology, they thought. They called them Foo Fighters. Then you fast forward again. And in the late 80s, early 90s, there were sightings, they called them a flap, mass sightings in UK and in Belgium. In fact, Belgium is an example of what should happen. They got together with civilians and scientists and university and military to study these phenomena. That's what we all should be doing, and they're just starting to admit that we're doing that here in the States. And at any rate, you fast forward again, and we have lots of other sightings that happen almost daily worldwide. At any rate, what was interesting, going back to the story, is that after the mass sighting, there was no investigation. There was no explanation. It was uncanny. Here, thousands, and we're estimating somewhere between 10 and 20,000 people that were outside purposely looking up at the sky at the Hale-Bopp Comet, also got a glimpse of these UAP, and there's no investigation, no explanation. Months passed. It wasn't until May that a former vice mayor of Phoenix, also councilwoman at the time, Frances Barwood, innocently, she didn't see it, but so many of her constituents had contacted her to say, why isn't there an investigation? This went right over our heads, right? Rooftop level. She asked for an investigation innocently at a meeting, a council meeting, and she was plastered by the media. There was so much ridicule and snickering and discrediting at the time. There was no way I was coming forward anyway until I did my homework. But she really got plastered. And so did others that tried to come forward. And in the meantime, I'm doing my homework, just gathering as much information as I can, keeping an intricate journal that is getting bigger and bigger of credible data that I was finding worldwide of these phenomena. And suddenly, after almost 5 months, June 18, 1997, front page USA Today article, for the first time, people were hearing about our mass sighting outside of Arizona. It went viral, and we didn't have social media at the time. Overnight, the next morning, it was on every national morning show here, Peter Jennings, Dan Rather. I mean, it was massive news worldwide. We were deluged by media from all over the world overnight. And once they started talking to the witnesses, their descriptions were so detailed, so heartfelt, that they too were asking, why isn't there an explanation? Why isn't there an investigation? The very next morning, on the 19th of June, just out of the blue, we get a public announcement that then Governor Fife-Symington called an unscheduled press conference for that afternoon to reveal the culprit of the lights over Phoenix. And I have to say, I was excited, as were others. I want to find out what's going on. He comes marching out, one of his aides, with a giant alien head costume and made a mockery of the mass sighting, which was not funny to the people that saw the real deal, especially parents who were with children that saw something that was 2-3 malls wide, and he's making a joke out of it. For me, it wasn't a joke either. And even though it put a lid on things for a bit, I called every military base, and I have some of their conversations in the book that were quite comical, because they were more interested in meeting with me and seeing what I had documented on film, which I did not describe. I did not tell them any details, than giving an explanation. They were just as curious. In fact, one of them said to me, and I tried to get as high up as I could in ranking, the only ones that know who did this were God and whoever did this. That's what he said to me, right? So anyway, about a month later, this is July 24th, 97, I get a call from one of the heads of PR of the Air National Guard. And she says, oh, Dr. Lynne, I think we know what those lights were back in March. And I was thrilled. She said, do you believe nobody ever looked at the log for visiting Air National Guard, and the Maryland Air National Guard was in town sending off military illumination flares in Operation Snowbird, quote unquote, which I found out later in military terms means diversionary tactical maneuvers. So they may very well have been sending off flares to divert attention away from the true unknowns, but that's certainly not what thousands of people saw right above their heads. She says that must be what some people saw. I said, wait a minute. I said, when was the Maryland Air National Guard in town? She said, March 1st to the 15th. I said, were they in town in January? She said, oh no. I said, are you sure? She said, absolutely not. I said, well, my husband and I happened to see the same exact phenomena over the same exact location at a distance, confirmed the next morning by air traffic controllers at Sky Harbor International Airport as hovering at 1,000 feet altitude over Class B restricted airspace. And she says, you never told me that. And I said, besides, you're trying to tell me, and by then I educated myself to anything logical, including military flares, that military illumination flares that fall from an aircraft on a parachute that drift haphazardly downward in seconds with the wind have huge smoke trails that are illuminated by the flare itself and illuminate the area around it. In fact, if anyone has seen the new movie Maverick, the Top Gun movie, it took me aback, and I was thrilled that they actually show jets pouring out flares, and you can see that they're obviously not the Phoenix lights. But at any rate, I said, and you're trying to tell me that flares, and not one person, by the way, described any of those characteristics that saw the true Phoenix lights. I said, and you're trying to tell me that flares that cannot keep a formation for maybe more than a couple seconds traversed the entire state in a rock-solid, equidistantly spaced mile-wide V for hours. And she says, I have a call coming in. I'll get back to you. Well, I'm still waiting for that call 25 years later. Anyway, that really, I mean, was very disheartening, to say the least, because a lot of people, and I get it, look for a logical explanation for things that they can't explain. And many people did feed into that logical explanation, especially when there was a program that came into town, and I tried to impress the producer and director that there was much more to the story. And I even showed them my pictures from 2 months before, and they wouldn't even look at them. And they said, oh, the military said it was flares. So, yeah. And they tried to prove over and over, and they actually changed the video of the boomerang. They really concentrated on the boomerang video because it's really impressive. It's huge, as being flares. And if you go on the Phoenix Lights Network website news page, scroll down a little bit, you'll see a block there from AZ Family. That's our CNN affiliate here. And they took video 3 years after the mass sighting. We get an announcement that 3 Air National Guards were coming into town, because then Councilwoman Barwood was running for Secretary of State on a platform to get answers for the Phoenix Lights. And she was asking for a reenactment. Brilliant. And we get this announcement right before the 3rd anniversary that 3 Air National Guards were coming into town to show everyone the Phoenix Lights. Now, whether they thought they could diffuse the issue or defuse the issue, talk about a joke. And again, if you go down to this AZ Family Square, you will see the video of what they tried to do. They tried to make a triangle. It was upside down, fell apart immediately. One of them even fizzled out right away, had huge smoke trails, just what flares do. They were supposed to do a 2-week run. They were the laughing stock. They scrapped the whole rest of the 2 weeks. That really put a nail in the coffin for the flare theory. And also, if you also look at that page, just a couple of years ago, a fellow used real advanced software to stabilize, to see how stable that boomerang was. And not only does it show that those lights don't move, I mean, they're rock solid. And one of them actually elevates and splits in 2, which flares don't do, okay? So that was another little confirmation. But at any rate, to date, the Phoenix Lights have never been reenacted or explained, but continue to appear worldwide, which is kind of cool, because after 7 years of anonymity, pushed my whole medical career aside, okay, to keep this intricate journal, had a 750-page journal 7 years later, didn't know what to do with it. I did not want to come forward. So many people were discredited. Village Labs, where this fellow was who was analyzing the pictures, one of the places, actually was discredited in a magazine, in a newspaper article, so badly that one of the chief investigators, chief contributors to the supercomputer that he was working on, like a $2 million funding, pulled out, and he lost Village Labs. I mean, that's how bad it got. Okay, so I was very happy to keep anonymous. Yeah, so many people were discredited. Even Village Labs was lost in the process. It was awful, that I was very happy to keep anonymous. I don't need to do this, but for some reason, I need to do this. Not only as a scientist, trying to be as careful with the data and credible with the data as possible, as a physician, to let people know they're not alone. Even though most anomalies can be explained, only a small percentage cannot. But just because we don't have the technology yet to definitively define what these things are, it doesn't mean they're not real. We may just be looking on an AM dial for an FM frequency. And also, when someone has a paranormal experience, or even though it may be able to be explained, it's real to that person. And if they don't share it, it festers. And it's not healthy. And as a physician, I know, and as an experiencer, I know how that feels. And just sharing with one person, I always welcome people to message me on Facebook, Phoenix Lights Network Facebook page, or through the website. There's contact right at the top. Even just sharing with one person is healing. It's cathartic. And again, as an experiencer, I know how that feels, okay? And as an educator of vital health issues for over 50 years now, how could I think what I had in a drawer after going to extreme lengths to have my photographs? And I have a number of them. If you look on the photo page on the Phoenix Lights Network website, my unique collection there that cannot be explained or denied. They're in the negative by university or military optical experts to this day. So finally, I went back to work actually to put our younger son through medical school. He's a neurologist, and he's the only one that read the 750-page journal. And, you know, I really trusted his judgment. I didn't know what to do with it. It was just a mishmash of so many things of history and witness accounts and I mean, everything you could think of. And he looked at me, he said, "Mom, you have to do this. This is too important not to share. And everything you've done has led up to this from the mouth of babes." I mean, here, you know, being a community educator of vital health issues for 50 years, how could I not educate the public after I had educated myself on this vital issue? So I went back to work. I was chief clinical consultant of the Wellness and Imaging Center at the Arizona Heart Institute. And while in between patients, I would close the door and take the 750-page journal and squeeze it down, the best, most credible data that I could find, to 230 pages. And finally, after much soul searching, because I did not want to come forward, but I figured, you know what? The data is what it is. Let people decide for themselves. I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything. Just look at the data. If I can be a credible voice, so people actually look at the data, then I've done my job. Finally came forward with the first edition of the Phoenix Lights, A Skeptic's Discovery That We Are Not Alone. And I'm excited that you have little papers in there, because so many people have shown me that, you know, they've written little sentences on the side and so forth, which is wonderful. I mean, it's really, I had no idea. I was really nervous. I had no idea what would happen after I came forward. And interestingly, once the book came out in March of 2004, the Phoenix Lights, A Skeptic's Discovery That We Are Not Alone, I had more doctors and nurses at the Arizona Heart Institute pull me aside to tell me their stories and how thankful and grateful they were that I came forward with the information. Because, and I had no idea that and I didn't even want to tell my story. I just wanted to get the data out there, but it was a little boring. So I just figured, the heck with it. I'm just letting it all hang out. And as people read the book, and I've now in its fourth print, because even though I was approached by the publisher, it was very successful. They wanted me to write another book after more information came out, including in 2017, the private pilot, who I had no idea who it was, came forward to say that he had called the tower, the air traffic tower, to report these lights. And it happened to be when I was filming it, was Kurt Russell, the actor, which is really cool. The other thing that happened right after, can I say that again? The other thing that happened that was really profound, actually, is right after the 10th anniversary of the mass sighting. Former Governor Symington, who had mocked the sighting in '97, bravely came forward for whatever reason to announce and disclose that he actually saw one of these craft. And as an awarded military pilot, it definitely wasn't flares. He saw a craft. And in his own words, it was otherworldly, which is the word, by the way, that is used consistently by other countries who are much more open to these phenomena as being unearthly, otherworldly. And so that's, you know, the story continues to evolve, and the publisher wanted me to write a new book. And I said, no, 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 no. I said, I squeezed down the first edition to the most credible data and let people see how the story unfolded. That must be in the book, whatever I do next. So I will write additional chapters as the story unfolds. And that's what I've done. It's now in its fourth print. And even though the paperback is terrific, because I know a lot of people like it in their hand, I also recommend the ebook for those. It can be read on any digital device, because that one has color pictures, and I put live links. Again, I'm an educator. I want people, if they're interested, to go, on a link and go explore whatever they want to explore. The website also, the Phoenix Lights Network website, is packed with a plethora of credible data that is really to explore and to consider. And also, this is the latest edition of the documentary, which is now streaming on Amazon. Anybody that can get to Amazon, both the book and I think it's in UK if you want to get it there from Italy. Both the book and the documentary are there. Here's the Phoenix Lights, the latest edition. And also, my life's work, especially in health, certainly was to educate youth to all different topics, the reality of substance abuse and AIDS and teen pregnancy and so forth. And I've been working for over 7 years now, getting a curriculum together. But what I wanted to do for all ages, for parents and grandparents to do with their kids, for teachers to do in the classroom, we now have the Phoenix Lights. Okay, this is also on Amazon. It's called the Phoenix Lights UFOs and Crop Circle Graphic Novel Activities Coloring Book. The Adventures of Sue FO and Hugh FO. If you can see, he's a little alien. Worked with Disney illustrators, teachers, students. We have pilot programs, 4th, 5th, 6th graders that really gave amazing feedback. This book is filled. I mean, it's unbelievable. To me, this is the best of them all, because it has not only a little story of the Phoenix Lights, but it also has 10 of the craft that were actually drawn to scale, to color, as well as crop circles, 80 crop circles. And I tried to pick the most intricate that couldn't possibly have been made by human beings, as well as activities. We have crossword puzzles and word finders, and from easy to difficult, so that everybody can take part, as well as the answers for those of us who are challenged. And I invite people to take a look at it on Amazon as well, and on my Facebook page, which is really fun. So not only do we have the website, the book, the documentary, which is streaming on Amazon, and also is streaming now in Amazon Prime. If you have Amazon Prime, it's free. And also on Tubi. They just put it on Tubi. For years it was on Netflix and YouTube, but they just put it on Tubi for free, if you can get Tubi, Tubi. And also what we're doing now, because so many people, and this is a whole nother road of discovery, because a number of witnesses shared with me that they had had near-death experiences as children that was reawakened by the mass sighting. And that really hit me hard, because I did too. I was like, whoa, when I get into the whole near-death experience as 8 years old, mind-boggling, changed my life forever. And I have felt that we are not alone since that time. Won't ruin it, won't spoil it for the reader, but the story itself is pretty phenomenal. And they have set the groundwork for what's happening now. I'll let the reader decide. But in the meantime, I thought, whoa, could there be a connection between all unexplained phenomena, whether near-death experience, out-of-body experience, unexplained aerial phenomena that have a mystical light associated with the experience. And lo and behold, just like with the UFO phenomena, there is credible data out there at university level. The Omega Project, like a 3-4-inch book by Dr. Kenneth Ring at the University of Connecticut. Dr. John Mack at Harvard University had this whole institute called the E.P.A.S Institute that was studying these things and finding a connection, not only in the experience itself, and I lay out very simply in the book, very similar, whatever the unexplained phenomena experience is, but the after effect. And I started calling all unexplained phenomena and UP, unexplained phenomena, because they are the positive awakening, the enlightenment, the connectedness that one feels after an up experience to the universe, to the earth, to each other, that was probably never felt before by that experiencer. Changes people forever. It's mind-boggling when you really look at the data, how many people were changed in real time. Go back to 97, 6 months before, the movie Independence Day was really popular. And we go into this in the documentary, how Hollywood and the media has portrayed UFOs and ETs and all that in a very threatening way, in a very harmful way, over and over and over again. And Dr. Gary Schwartz, the head of the optical science department at the University of Arizona, who I worked with and wrote the introduction to my book, he's also in the documentary and makes a very poignant statement that if you're inundated with something that you can fear, that you should fear, how do you think you're going to react when you see that something? So children who, interestingly, were usually the first to alert their parents to this massive V coming towards them of light, were jumping up and down, Independence Day, Independence Day. But as it came close, a calmness came over everyone. Not only children, but adults as well, a connectiveness to the phenomena that when it passed over, they wanted to chase after it. They wanted their parents to get in the car and drive and try to follow it. A real-time positive transformation, an up experience in real time. And long-term, we have people that went into the environmental movement, went into the peace movement, changed their eating habits, would not eat meat anymore. It's mind-boggling, the transformation in long-term as well. To this day, I still have people, and that's important too. There has not been not one report in 25 years, not one credible report of harm, threat, or abduction associated with the Phoenix Lights phenomena. I can't speak for other things, but I can for the Phoenix Lights. If anything, it was the opposite. People were in awe and in wonder, just curious. I can't tell you how many cars pulled over to watch it, just in awe. And even till today, I still have messages and emails from people telling me that they feel blessed. They feel blessed to have had the experience 25 years ago. That doesn't happen with planes and helicopters and flares, okay? And so now we are embarking on a very scientific study to quantify the credible data of real-time and long-term effects, not only of the Phoenix Lights, but of other similar UFO and UAP experiences and other paranormal experiences that may be associated with those UAP, like near-death experience. And if anybody's interested, if they've had, and you don't, by the way, you don't have to have the experience to have this positive transformation. All you need to do is open your mind and your heart and learn about it. And the more you learn, and again, I had people tell me over and over again that just reading the book alone, they were transformed to a positive place. And it opened them up to the serendipities that were happening in their lives that they never recognized before. It's really interesting how these phenomena, the Phoenix Lights, and people have asked me for years since I came forward in 2004, what were they? I don't know what they were. I just know that they were. And that it's time again to get this topic out in the open and address it, accept it, and study it. So we can find out not only who's driving these things, but move forward in our own evolution. It's just like the flat earth people times. We're right on the precipice. And now that the government, again, and the military have come forward the last few years to disclose that they're finally studying it, which they have been for decades, but at least it's out in the open. And now more credible people to come forward, like the governor, like Kurt Russell, the actor, the more credible people that come forward, the Navy Nimitz pilots and other military that are now retired that are coming forward, because pilots were threatened with their careers if they came forward. And now they are in great numbers to say that they've seen something unusual that cannot be explained. That's the main thing. Something is visiting us. And it's certainly when we look at the submersibles, they call them, coming out of the ocean and hovering right above the ocean and diving into the ocean. What's that? They could have been here for millennia under our seas. 70% of the earth is ocean and so deep that we can't get there. But maybe somebody else has and have been here. I mean, who knows? Look, let's be real. Now that the Hubble and the Kepler and so forth and other telescopes, new ones, are showing us that there are billions of other galaxies along with ours, with trillions of their own stars, with planets around those stars, okay? And we're finding habitable areas ourselves through these telescopes where there may be life, even moons of planets where there may be life. We also know that the ingredients of life are out there. Nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, amino acids, the ingredients of life are out there. When a star bursts, those ingredients of life are sent all over the universe. It's called panspermia. Were we seeded here that way? Did somebody bring us here that way? I know there's so many different theories, as well as who's visiting us. I mean, not only could they have been here for millennia, but is it time travelers? Is it interdimensional, which is more of my take because I saw it up close and personal, go somewhere, but it still felt like it was there, okay? Interstellar. I don't know. Hopefully we'll find out one day. I would love to find out in my own lifetime. But the fact is that something is visiting us in a very gentle, non-threatening way to wake us up to their presence. And also one person at a time. And that's what this study is going to show. If people would like to go to our website, Phoenix Lights Network website, www.thephoenixlights.net, right on the landing page below the triangle, there's a link where they can go right to the questionnaire, which is totally anonymous, totally confidential. Once they're in there, we don't know their name, we don't know their IP address, we just want the data. We want honesty, we want transparency, we want people to be truthful. And a lot of people have been coming back to me now. We have over 300 people just in a month that have taken the survey, and we're already seeing trends, amazing, riveting trends that I look forward to sharing with the public once we get it together. So I welcome our audience to please go there. If you've had an experience, if you just are interested in the Phoenix Lights. The Phoenix Lights, and I've had many people tell me, from all over the world, that even though they didn't see them, just by seeing an interview, by reading the book, by watching the documentary, by even just hearing about it and discussing it, the Phoenix Lights has changed their lives, have awakened them to the wondrous possibilities of the universe. And that's the main message of the Phoenix Lights, because over and over and over again, not only have they awakened people, but the message consistently, and it's not just the Phoenix Lights, near-death experiencers have come back with the same message, is to wake up to what you're doing to your planet and yourselves before it's too late. And if that's not a message that needs to be shared.
You shared so many great informations and thoughts, And I read the book and I also watched the documentary, and I have to say that it's really worth. There are more information inside the book too that it would be great to read it. That of course it's not possible to explain everything right here and right now. So I definitely suggest to read the book and find out all the other things that today we couldn't have it online or recording. I love that everything has been explained, and actually there are no theories that are left out. So while I was reading the book, I was actually figuring things out, and I was like, what if? And then I was turning the page, and the next page there was actually the what if that I thought the page before. So it's really really intriguing. I loved it. So, and I really appreciate all this recording that we've done. It's
Well,
amazing.
I appreciate being able to share it. And for those out there who might be thinking of reading the book, there is so much more to this story. As you know, we just hit on the tip of the iceberg. There is so much more underneath, including paranormal experiences that happened after the Phoenix Lights mass sighting.
Yes.
And another thing which your audience might find interesting is that, again, I don't believe in coincidences anymore. 10 years before the mass sighting, I actually did a movie that came out called Raising Arizona. The Coen brothers, very famous. And the cast was incredible with Nicolas Cage and Holly Hunter and Frances McDormand, who's won, a number of Academy Awards, and John Goodman and William Forsythe are all in this film. And I play a small principal role. The story is a Black comedy about a couple, Nicolas Cage and Holly Hunter, who cannot conceive. And they decide to kidnap one of the Arizona quintuplets. And I play the mother, Florence, Arizona, of the quintuplets. I had someone come up to me after I came forward, like in 2006 or 7, once they got wind that I had done the movie. And they had announced it at the beginning. And he said to me, there's a reference to your character, Florence, Arizona, and UFOs in the film. And I had not watched it since the late 80s. It came out in 87, 10 years before the mass sighting. I said, really? I go back to the film. And if you ever watch it, after one of the quintuplets is kidnapped, there is a press conference in front of our home. And a reporter sticks a microphone in my husband's face and says, there's a rumor that your son was abducted by UFOs. Is there any truth to that? And my husband says, oh, please, son, please don't print that. If his mama reads that, she'll lose all hope, which of course is opposite from my own take. But nonetheless, it's the only reference to UFOs in the entire film. Coincidence? And it gets better. The cinematographer who went on, just as many of the stars in the film, it was their first big film, to do Big with Tom Hanks, When Harry Met Sally with Billy Crystal, How the West Was Won with Will Smith, The Addams Family, and a whole host of other giant hit films. Also, drumroll, created and directed the Men in Black series, Barry Sonnenfeld, which opened, the first one premiered in 1997, the same year as the Phoenix Lights mass sighting. Coincidence?
It's amazing. It's very intriguing. I love it.
And there's one more thing if you want to include it.
Sure.
Going back to the 95 sighting, briefly, because the whole study, Dr. Bruce Maccabee's paper, the 21-page report, is on the website for anyone that cares to read it. A year after the mass sighting, in 1998, there was another huge sighting through a fog, which is extremely rare in Phoenix. Our humidity is usually below the teens, okay? And that weekend in January, it was like a wall of fog. In fact, my husband even kidded they could be watching and we don't even see them because we couldn't see beyond our street. And it started to dissipate a little bit. And I had already met with the University of Arizona Optical Science Department. The head of the Optical Science Department took great interest in my photographs. And he had said to me, look, you're using a cheap Instamatic camera. If the lights come back, which they hadn't yet, you've got to get a better camera, right? Anyway, the second night, I see out on the balcony, even though it's still foggy out there, my husband and I are standing outside, and suddenly I see couple amber orbs behind him in the sky, and they're muted because of the fog. And I thought, ooh, are they back? Right? So I called the University of Arizona, Dr. Richard Howell, and I asked him, what should I get? I ended up going out that day and getting a top of the line Pentax camera with a telelens and a star filter. And that night they came back again. And I called Village Labs and I said, you know what, alert the other 3 videographers from March 13th, which interestingly, again, little coincidence, were situated north, south, east, and west, to be on call if they should show up again, which I had a feeling they would, and they did. In the documentary, we show the footage, which is unbelievable. Straight lines, mirror images, 40 miles wide, a 20-minute array. The final thing is a giant pyramid of 3 lights, again in the same place. Remember those skylights? Well, you can see it's in the same location again. And now I had 4 videos from north, south, east, and west of the same exact phenomena happening at the same exact time, which was not happening in March 13th, because as I mentioned, 2 videos were taken before 10 o'clock. The boomerang videos were after 10 o'clock, and I had actually hired a geological professor from Arizona State University to try to triangulate the videos to see where this thing was showing up. He went to the Kristen's house first that did the boomerang and came to my house second. And I said, you know, here's my video. It's the 3 lights over the city. He said, wait a minute, your video is different than the boomerang. I said, right. He said, he took his after 10 o'clock, right? I said, no, I took mine before 10 o'clock. He said, I can't triangulate these. They happen not only at different times, but they could be different phenomena. They look different. And then when he saw the arrowhead, he said, forget about it. I'm not doing this. And he walked out. So here I had 4 videos taken at the same time of the same thing. So in the interim, very few people, because I was trying to find out what I had on 35 millimeter and just met with top people in the field, very few people knew that I had this data. But one of them, Linda Moulton Howe, if you ever heard of her name, said to me, you've got to get in touch with Navy optical physicist Dr. Bruce McAfee to see your pictures and analyze them. And I just didn't until then. I thought, you know what? I have these 4 videos. Let me send them off to him. And as an afterthought, and by then I had met with Village Labs and we discovered there were more pictures on that strip. In fact, not only the first and the last that I put on the website, on the Phoenix Lights Network photo page, but the negative that's attached to the last picture. The only thing in that negative are the 2 unknowns. No other lights, no city lights, nothing. Just very bizarre, okay? But be that as it may, I sent him the first and last picture, and I said, can you tell me what those closed orbs are? He calls me back a couple weeks later. He said, you told me that that close sighting in 95 was only 2-3 minutes long. I said, right. Are you sure? I said, that's what I remember. He said, ask your husband. I said, he won't talk about it. He said, you've got to corroborate it. I sat him down. I said, we don't have to talk about it, but what do you, and of course, this is like 3 years later. What do you remember that close sighting as being time-wise? He said, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 minutes tops. I go back to Dr. McAfee. He said, that's impossible. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, first of all, he was the first to notice that the same exact phenomenon on a line were disappearing in the 95 pictures that I would also capture in the 97 pictures 2 months before and during the mass sighting. And you can see they're disappearing as the closed orbs are disappearing. There's 4 in the first picture and 2 in the last picture. He said, but that's not the most significant thing. I said, okay. He said, look at the skyline. I said, all right. He said, there's many lights on. not just individual, but groups of lights on in the first picture that are off in the last picture. He said, that doesn't happen in a couple minutes. He said, I want you to do an experiment. And again, he was very meticulous with all this. He said, stand on the balcony about the same spot you were standing in 95. Take pictures of the skyline one night every hour, the next night every half hour. I actually did it another night every 15 minutes to see when these groups of lights go out. Now, I usually take a bath when we're home between 7 and 8. So let's be conservative and say 8 o'clock is the starting point. The groups of lights started going out at 9 o'clock. The last picture is indicative of 10:30, 11 o'clock. And he actually did it again with better software a few years ago for National Geographic TV show, and saw that there were more lights that were on in the first picture that were off in the last picture. He says to me, can I present this case in the upcoming 1999 MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, International Symposium in Washington, D.C.? I said, Dr. McAfee, this is your baby. I would have never, ever realized this data. Just keep my name out of it. And he, along with a handful of others, thank goodness, were kind enough to keep my name out of it and keep it anonymous. He presented the case in 1999, and I didn't share it with a soul until the second edition of the book in 2010, because I still can't wrap my head around it, as the first, and as far as we know, the only authenticated photographic evidence of missing time. That there were hours in between the first and the last picture, not minutes. And if you look at those pictures, in the first picture, the two orbs, one half disappeared and one's still there, are on the left side of that skylight. In the last picture, those two, the orbs are on the right side, okay? The two orbs on the left side, and the two orbs with one half disappeared and one's still there on the right side. So they moved, okay? Plus, that was his conclusion. And the reason that I shared it in 2010, because by then, the book was established enough that I thought, well, look, it's data. Maybe it's important data to prove that our concept of time, linear time, isn't what real time is. Past, present, and future isn't what real time is. And also that quantum physics and quantum mechanics have said now, postulated that there are 10 or 11 different dimensions along with ours. Well, if there's 10 or 11 different dimensions along with ours, why is it such a leap to think that there could be intelligent, sentient entities in those other times and spaces that we get glimpses of if we're open to them or invited? So I'm sharing it with you guys today. And if you want to look at his report, it is what it is. And also going back to the fact, not only could we have been seeded by panspermia here on Earth, but our Milky Way galaxy is a pretty young galaxy. It's about 14 billion years old. Our solar system is a very young solar system. It's only 4 to 6 billion years old. So there are scientists now postulating that there may be intelligent, sentient entities out there billions of years ahead of us. Billions of years ahead of us. Think about that one.
There's a lot to think about it and consider for sure. Dr. Lynne, I don't have words to thank you enough for your time that you donated today to explain to everybody your experience and your studies about the Phoenix Lights and also what there's all around the Phoenix Lights. It was a big, big pleasure for me.
Well, it's my supreme pleasure. And I hope when people do see something in the sky that resembles the Phoenix Lights, that's happening worldwide now, as they look up and say, oh, there's the Phoenix Lights, that it's opened their mind and their hearts to the wondrous possibilities that are out there. And again, I welcome your audience to please join us in our important study. This is a really important study to quantify scientifically how the Phoenix Lights and other similar phenomena are affecting people in real time and long term. So I invite everyone to look at the website, the books, the documentary, as well as the study, and to keep looking up.